Right, morning guys. So wife's gone to work, which means I'm in my second home, which is the garage. So I can do a bit of engineering. So I thought I'd do a video this morning to show you guys how to do a bit of welding. Now, this is aimed at people that have perhaps never picked up a welder before. Perhaps they've got an old car that needs a bit of repair. The garage is giving them a quote, and I hate garages. You'll learn this with hopefully future videos. I'm very much a believer that do it yourself, then you know it's done right. Granted, this is your first time using a welder, you're not going to be perfect straight off. Don't expect to be, watch this and like, yeah, I'm the best welder in the world. It won't happen. But I'm going to give my best shot at trying to teach you guys that you can do it, and hopefully help you out with future projects as well. Right, so we'll start with choosing the machine. This is my Old Faithful, which is a cheap and nasty eBay welder, and I've had it 7 years, if I'm honest with you, probably more. You can pick these up for about 150 quid now. They're not that expensive. Now, the main problem with this machine, my one in particular, is the wire feed. You've got a motor and a wheel in there. In fact, I'll get it out now. And what it does is it bites on the wire and sends it through. So the main problem with it is it slips, and you can be mid-weld, and it's an absolute nightmare. Obviously I've planned this well, I've not got this off already. There she is, right. Let's see if you can see this on there. Now this is the wheel. Now don't get me wrong, this was something I did a long time ago, it's not perfect. Now you can see these little cross cuts. This is probably one of the best mods you'll ever do to your machine. Literally all the way around, put little cuts into it. Now what this does is it bites into the wire, and this literally, I say it can't slip, it can slip, but this really does improve it. Now my mate has got a Sabora welder, and he said don't buy a cheap welder, don't buy a cheap welder. Me being me, I just bought one anyway. After a bit of tweaking with this, I got it welding a lot better than his Sabora welder, which he's not too pleased about. But anyway, so that's the wire feed. So this is obviously a MIG welder. This is 195 amp, depending on what you're doing. This is probably a bit overkill than what most people need. Say a 130 amp would probably do most tasks you need in the garage, unless you're doing real thick chassis steel. Gasless welders, don't bother. Just do not bother. Complete waste of time. Well, they've got their purpose, I suppose. But you'll weld a lot better with a proper gas welder. You can buy little bottles, so if you're going to do it's just a quick job, you're not going to use it that much, it's going to sit in the corner of the garage, then one of these small bottles, there's little you can get them in Halfords, little small bottles will be fine. However, when you start picking up more and more projects, get one of these. Don't go to BOC. Go down to the local motor factors, they'll do rent-free bottles, and you pay a deposit. It'll vary where you go, and then you just pay for the refills after. Whereas if you go for a rental place, it doesn't happen to be BOC, it could be anywhere for that matter, then you're going to basically pay a fortune. It's going to sit in the corner of your garage and you're wasting money, which I'm not a fan of, because that costs projects. Projects need money, so that's a bad idea. Anyhow, so back to it. This is a MIG welder. You've got wire feed. You've got wire feed speed, so that's literally the faster it goes, the faster the wire comes out the end of the torch. Then you've got your heat settings. This is quite crude. This is literally a 1-2 min and max. You'll work out which works best. We'll go into the settings later. Then you've got your torch. Now, this is the business end. Now, one of the most important things is keeping this well maintained. You've got your shroud. Keep this clean. These are like consumables, so you can get new ones. They're peanuts. So always keep a supply at the side. Then you've got the actual tip there itself. Now this, again, another consumable. When you're welding, this will wear out over time. It will come out of round. These are peanuts. Keep a supply of them. As soon as that hole in the end goes out of round, change it out. It's not worth messing around. You'll get a lot better weld, because it will be a lot better contact. So there's your torch. Right, regarding setting up the machine, depends what you're doing. If you're doing, I'm gonna tailor this video more to bodywork steel because this is probably what you're going to be using this for, I imagine. Anyhow, right. So bodywork steel, typically 1.2 to 1.4 mil. So relatively thin. Best advice to you when you're doing repairs on your sills on your car, don't just, I'll cut a little bit out, it'll be right. You can't weld to rust, and if you're learning, you're not going to be in a good position. You'll end up putting holes and holes and holes, and you'll get more and more annoyed, and it'll look absolutely terrible. So spend the time, cut the rot out until you get to full thickness metal, and then making your templates for your steel. This is very important. You almost want to spend more time making the cardboard template than any other part of this task at all. It's only got to be 1 mil out, 2 mil out, and you've got a nice gap which basically says insert blast hole here. You don't want that. You do not want that at all. So what you can do, this is quite a good way of doing it. Well, it works for me. Cut all your rot out, and then get yourself, rob all your cardboard box, wait till the wife's gone, and then rob all the cereal boxes out the kitchen. Cut it so it overlaps, and then press it on. Now be careful, don't be an idiot and put your thumb straight through it, but rub your thumb on the back of it, and then you'll get a nice indent. Cut that out and put it up to the repair area. If there is any kind of gap, chuck it, start again. This template has got to be perfect. It'll pay dividends later on. So once you've done that, you've got your repair panel. Brilliant. You've got your repair template, shall I say? Put it on your sheet steel. Let's say typically 1.2 to 1.4 mil. Mark it out. Cut it out. Now when this point, you might have the bends or whatever. Make whatever profile you need to make it fit the car. So you put it up to it. If there's any gaps at all, then you need to sort those out. To take off the high spots, a little file. You don't need anything fancy to do this. Just a bog standard file will do it, and get that edge with as little gap around as possible. So now you've done that. You've made your panel. So you come into welding it now. Now, the second most important bit of your welder is your earthing clamp. Keep this as clean as you keep that. At the end of the day, this connects the circuit. This can be clean as a whistle. If you've got a rubbish earth, you ain't going to get anywhere. So, wire brush this, keep this nice and clean, and you want this as close to your welding area as possible. The closer it is, the better arc you're going to get. So obviously you've got to take off your paint and everything, and try and get this to bare bit of metal. Which, if you're cutting holes out your car, I think that's the least of your worries right now. Yeah, so get that as close as possible. Obviously disconnect the battery on the car and the ECU and everything else. So you don't want to fry any electrics. That's just simple. So now when it comes to actually doing the welding itself. Now, don't go straight to your car. It's gonna be a disaster. Get yourself some scrap metal and practice first. Now, one thing I tell you what we should probably talk about is the safety equipment. Really, it might be an idea. Oh, easy. Gloves. Talk about some gloves, shall we? Right. These are the cheap ones you get on eBay. If you're going to do a little bit of welding and then it's going to sit in the corner of the garage for a while, fine, no problem. If you're going to do a bit more, buy yourself some decent ones. Because what normally happens with these, all the stitching comes out, and then before you know it, you get a bit warm. And that gets quite hot. So, buy yourself some decent gloves, decent overalls, and the mask. Now, mine's a bit grubby. Doesn't have to be anything as elaborate as this. I just like the look of it, if I was perfectly honest with you. But this is an auto darkening one. The handheld ones, they do a job. Not great. Personally, I wouldn't bother. I would get a proper auto darkening one, it just takes all the hassle out of it. So you put the mask on, and then literally you can see everything, and then as soon as you hit the arc, hit the torch, and the arc's created, it shuts down. As soon as you stop, you can see again, rather than lid down, lid up, lid down, lid up. A lot easier. These aren't that expensive. Worth the money. Right, rewind. Back to doing the practicing. Now, you probably can't quite see it on there, but I've got a bit of scribble all over the top of my machine. And what that relates to is I've had a practice with various materials and thicknesses, and I've found out a setting that works. Now once I've found it works, scribble it on your machine, then when you come to do another weld, then you've got a reference to start from. So you've got your scrap piece of metal, you're going to give it a bit of a practice. Now with the settings, right, you want it relatively low to start with. You're using thin metal. So you've fixed your earthing clamp, torch is on the go, hood's down, and you start welding, and the first thing you notice is, ooh, look at it, you know, the torch is pushing away from the weld. That is a combination of two things, but the first thing you want to do is turn your wire feed back down. If it's the other way, and you're welding and the wire's disappearing up the torch and all of a sudden it's stopping, that's because your wire feed's not fast enough. So again, you can tweak that up and change that until you get the right position. So penetration. Penetration for a weld is most important. You can stick it all on the top, it'll have no strength, and it'll look rubbish. As soon as you grind it, which you don't. One of my mates has said, you don't need to be a good welder, you need to be good at grinding, which is rubbish, right? It might make it look pretty, but it's not got no strength. You might as well fill it full of body filler, and that's just not what this is about. So, penetration, you want the weld to make full penetration through the metal to get proper bonding strength. So you need to play with these settings, and basically, you want the torch. In an ideal world, you want the torch at 90 degrees to it. However, you're welding sheet metal, which is very thin. So if you shallow off the torch, you'll get less penetration, but you're less likely to blow through. There's two different ways of actually doing the weld itself. You can either just do a straight line, which is not literally a straight line. You want to do like a sweeping motion. Watch the art form and sweep your way down. That is good. However, when you're working with thin metal, it's likely to warp. Now, the way I do it is I do have the torch at 90 degrees, and you do a series of spot welds, and you literally hit it, release. Now, whilst it's still cherry red, hit it again, and just keep overlapping it. So you basically want to do a series of overlaps. Now, this basically reduces your risk of warping, and then don't do it all in one area. You want to do, let it cool down, and you want to go from side, so one end of the panel to the other, and basically even the heat out if you can. Another way of doing that, if you've got the luxury of being able to get on the back of it, is to put a heat soak on the back. So any piece of, say, copper would be good, a piece of aluminium, something that's going to take the heat away. That'll help you reduce blow through as well. Keeping the area clean, the prep for the weld. So I've done this a bit backwards really, but hopefully you've not started welding already. The prep for the weld, you need bright, shiny metal. I've mentioned it before, you can't weld to rust. Welding to rust is just, it doesn't work, quite frankly, it just doesn't work. You want nice, bright metal. You can get a wire brush is a cheap way of doing it. If you go to most DIY stores, you can get like a honeycomb attachment that goes on a drill, and that will take, especially for car body repairs, it will take the paint off, but it won't do much damage to the steel, which is what you want because you don't want to reduce the thickness of the steel. There's loads of different ways you can do it, but the cleaner the metal, generally speaking, the better the weld. So keep everything clean. Well, I think that's pretty much covered it. I mean, this is just the first little video. Granted, it says it's 14 odd minutes long, but I've tried to cover as much as possible. If you liked what you what you've seen so far, then please comment below, and yeah, I'll see if I can get some more videos up, perhaps little projects and stuff. But this is just hopefully a helpful video it was for you for learning to weld for the first time. Anyhow, that's it from the Wrengineering Garage. See you all soon.